If you're having trouble with double clipping in the eye, your mouth masks feel wrong, or your clothing lacks depth, it's because live 2D clipping doesn't work how most artists expect. So by the end of today's lesson, we're going to solve the eye clipping issue, plus 4 other common clipping problems, including VBridger mouth masks. Almost every single one of my students run into the issue where part of their iris seems to fly off into space. This is known as the double clipping issue, and it's actually really simple to fix. If you're new to the VTuber workshop, my name is Yuna, and I've been a live 2D artist and instructor for the past few years, rigging models for many different creators. So what's actually happening with the double clipping issue? When we try to clip the shading to the iris, and then clip both of these to the sclera, the shading doesn't seem to stay clipped. It makes sense in theory, but why doesn't it work? Well, live 2D doesn't have a hierarchy for clipping, so the shading doesn't consider the clipping rules of anything other than what it's clipped to. Put more simply, the shading doesn't know it's being clipped to the sclera. To fix this, we need to take a step back and understand the 2 fundamentals of clipping and how it works in live 2D. These fundamentals are regular clipping and inverse clipping, which is the one we'll use to fix our issue. If you don't know, regular clipping is a method where you use one of your art meshes as a clipping mask. It's basically making one art mesh appear only when it's on the area of another. This is achieved by copying the ID of the art mesh you want to be the mask, and then pasting it into the other art mesh's clipping ID box in the inspector window. Now you can see our protagonist guild crest only moves when it's in the area of the mask. It's important to note that the draw order and layer order have an effect on clipping. If our guild crest were to be on a lower layer or draw order while clipped, it would be blocked by the square and not be seen at all. Our second fundamental is inverse clipping. It's very similar to regular clipping, but instead it has the opposite effect. With the guild crest selected, we can check the reverse mask button in our inspector window. We'll now see that this is opposite to our regular clipping. The crest now only displays when it's outside the area of the mask, similar to appearing behind the square even though it's still on a higher layer order. This is exactly how we'll fix the double clipping issue, so let's do that now. First, let's take all the parts of our iris, including the shading, and clip it to the sclera. Remember, to do this, all we need to do is take the ID from the art mesh that we want to be the mask, in this case the sclera, and paste it into the clipping ID box of all the iris parts. Now everything, including our shading, stays within the area of our mask. Now to fix our shading, we're going to do something a little different, but it uses what we just learned about inverse clipping to fix our issue. We're going to copy our sclera art mesh and paste a copy of it. We'll then take that duplicate and drag it above all the iris layers in our parts window. We're going to use this new sclera to cover the shading that extends outside the area of our iris. By copying our iris ID and reverse clipping it to the new sclera layer, we can see that the new sclera only appears outside the area of the iris, revealing the art below. It covers the extra shading and allows for the iris to move as usual. Before we move on to the next big issue, I know that was a lot of information really fast, so go back and pause the video if you need to. As always, both the PSD and rigging files used in this lesson are available to our patrons, but I'll give you more details on that at the end of this video. Now that we've solved one huge clipping issue, how can you use clipping to make more accurate mouth tracking? The method we're going to talk about today is layering design for VBridger mouth rigging, but the rigging itself deserves its own dedicated lesson, so let me know down in the comments if that's something you'd like us to cover in the future. For now, I'd like to introduce you guys to the main artist of the VTuber workshop, as I was going to make her explain the layering of the mouth, but she's a little shy, so we'll start with an introduction for now.
Hello, I'm Rabbit. Nice to meet you. Bye.
So let's go over the layers that Rabbit prepared for us. Alongside the layers of the mouth, we have 3 masks that will be used to make rigging easier. They're even split into different colors to help tell them apart. Our first 2, mask A and B, hide the inner mouth parts. And our third, mask inverse, follows the top lip, covering our bottom lip anytime the mouth closes. Now the common confusion here is what gets clipped to what. Even I get mixed up with this sometimes, so here's 2 bullet points that I keep written on a sticky note. Number 1 is that all inner mouth parts are inverse clipped to both masks A and B. Again, these are skin covers, so inverse clipping them means that the inner mouth parts only show outside the areas of the mask, allowing them to show when the mouth is open. Number 2 is that the lower lips and the shading are all inverse clipped to the inverse mask. This means that the bottom lips only appear outside the area of the inverse mask. Pair this method with glue and you can move everything at once to make mouth rigging smooth, consistent, and fast. But we'll talk about glue and VBridger mouth rigging in another lesson because there's still so many more concepts that Rabbit and I need to teach before then. For now, let's continue learning. So what if we're trying to create more depth in our clothing? Well, the method for this is usually done with the body x-axis, where the shading in the clothes are deformed within a mask to create depth. On my very own VTuber model, Rabbit provided masks for my chest plate straps. This allowed me to push the shading to create depth while maintaining the shape of the strap by deforming the mask. As you can see, it really adds an extra sense of depth, making the model seem more 3D. The same can be seen here, on the skirts of 2 of my VTuber clients. We actually have an in-depth skirt rigging lesson planned very soon, where we'll break down all the variations of skirt rigging, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. Now how about using masks for clothing in a different way, maybe to stop a skirt from showing through another piece of clothing? In this case, we can create a mask that outlines the outer piece of clothing and covers the area that the skirt underneath would usually show through. We can turn down the opacity of the clipping mask and inverse clip the parts of the skirt to it. Now, the mask hides the skirt whenever it goes outside the area of the clothing above. Next, let's talk about an issue where an outline appears at the edge of clipped parts. It commonly happens around the shading of the chin when we try to create the effect of the chin line disappearing when we look upwards. The simple fix to this is to duplicate the base mask, turn the opacity to 0, and clip to the invisible base instead. As long as both of your base art meshes are deformed within the same deformer, you won't have an issue with them trying to split or move separately. Our last issue is more of a bonus, and it's reducing the amount of clipping masks to help with model performance. Live2D has a recommended clipping limit of 36 for iOS and web, and exceeding this can cause problems for the exported SDK file. This means that every time you paste a different clipping ID, you're adding another point towards the clipping limit. Most VTuber models shouldn't run into this issue even if you exceed the limit by a little bit, but performance will always slow the more masks you use. So a clever way to reduce this is to combine clipping masks where two parts never overlap. An example of this would be with the eyes. Here we have iris L clipped to sclera L and iris R clipped to sclera R. This would currently be 2 points towards the clipping limit, as each one has a unique clipping ID. But what if we took both scleras, copied both IDs, and pasted them both into both iris clipping ID boxes separated by a comma? Now the ID becomes this entire block of text, and both irises technically have the same unique ID. Live2D will now register this as 1 point towards the clipping limit. Again, because these eyes will never overlap, one iris will never show on the other sclera, so we can get away with lowering the clipping limit with this trick. And those are all the most common clipping mistakes, but let's recap everything because we learned a lot. First, we explored the two fundamentals of clipping, reverse and inverse clipping, understanding that an art mesh can be clipped to the area of another art mesh by pasting one's ID into the clipping ID box of the other. Using reverse mask can create the opposite effect in keeping an art mesh outside the mask's area. Next, we learned how to solve the double clipping issue, pasting everything into one sclera and then duplicating and reversing another one to the iris base. We explored mouth mask layers and how the methods can be used for better and faster mouth rigging. Clothing depth was built by deforming shading and masks separately. And finally, we learned about clipping limits for model optimization. As mentioned before, all the files used to teach this lesson are available on our Patreon, and if you want to help support the channel to help us make more detailed videos teaching VTuber creation, then definitely consider joining. You'll also have early access to the lessons before YouTube, so you can rig the exact files that were used to teach, or use the study files to help you understand the rigging methods. The link is down in the description if that's a resource that interests you, and thank you so much for supporting the channel. So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. It was the first official video on this channel, and we had a lot of fun making it. I'm Yuna, your guild leader, so welcome to the Protagonist Guild, and remember, become the main character.